So I really hope this series can be beneficial to all the students of Italian. And so I thank you once again for this, and a special thank to all the students who are participating and following the series. Thank you once again. And Clorinda, I leave the floor to you.
Thank you. Well, it's really exciting to see Italian studies moving into the area of talking to students about what they can do with their degrees and with their skills. And we know that having these skills, having the knowledge that an Italian studies degree brings to you is super useful. But why not really have people who are doing exactly that, applying it and using it, come and talk to you? So it really is with great pleasure that I introduce to you today Dr. Giulia Togato, who joined our department this year. And it has really been wonderful and exciting to, first of all, have another colleague in Italian studies, but a colleague in Italian studies who is multilingual and uses her multiple languages to do exciting research, both theoretical and applied. And of course, to be a very, very active worker in the translation field. So let me give you a brief bio of Giulia. Giulia Togato studied translation and interpreting at the universities of Forlì in Italy. That's where the big School of Translation is, connected with the University of Bologna, and Granada in Spain. She obtained her PhD in neuroscientific and cognitive translatology from the University of Granada in 2016. She has been working as an in-house and freelance translator for the last 15 years. As a freelancer, her two last translated books, The Happiness Fantasy, originally published by Wiley, and Memory, published by Psychology Press, were published in 2019 and 2020, respectively, in Spain by Alianza Editorial. She taught psycholinguistics and translation at the University of Granada and at the Pennsylvania State University. Giulia now teaches translation within the minor in translation offered by the Clorinda Donato Center and CSULB, and conducts psycholinguistic research on translation and bilingualism in her laboratory at the Romance German Russian Languages and Literatures Department at California State University, Long Beach. She continues to translate from English, Italian, and French into Spanish. Giulia.
Thank you.
Giulia, can I just ask everybody before you start to mute themselves? And if you have any questions, you will start asking those in the chat, and Joanna Tatter, who's the program assistant to the Graziosi Center, can probably start sorting them out for answering, for Giulia being able to answer after the talk. Thank you so much. Go ahead, sorry.
Thank you. So first of all, thanks to Dr. Donato and Dr. Vettore and Dr. Calocchio for inviting me today, for having me today. It's my huge pleasure. I hope you will enjoy the talk. If you have any question, if you need any additional tip, if you just want to get in touch to know more about a specific topic, please send me an email. Okay, you're very welcome to get in touch. I mean, it's not the end of it, it's the beginning. So if you need me for whatever reason, just get in touch. Okay. I'm going to share the screen with you so you can see the PowerPoint. However, can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay,
yes, we can.
great. Okay. Don't worry too much about taking notes. it's more important if you can pay attention to the contents themselves, because you have code, so you can download the presentation on your phone, and you also have the link here, and the link would be provided through the chat. Okay, so don't worry, I will maybe we can take advantage of the question time we have, and I can send you the link so you can directly download from Google Drive the presentation. Okay. So today we're going to talk about translation, of course, and the main goal for today is to provide a getting started guide for future translator. So how are we going to, sorry, the presentation is not working. I cannot open my PowerPoint, otherwise it will not recognize it. Can you see it more or less clearly like this?
Yes.
Okay, great. So my main goal is to provide a getting started guide for future translators, so for students or people overall who can be interested in a career path in translation. So here we have a short index of more or less the topic that we are going to analyze today. And the Getting Started guide would be provided through the elaboration of a strategic plan in order to start a career in translation. So we are going to understand how to go from second language learning to a career in translation. And then we are also going to understand why we need specific training in translation. And I will provide psychological evidence to understand why training is so important to start to work as a professional translator. We are going to analyze several elements within the training that is necessary to work as a translator. We are going to have a look at the translation market, and we are going to talk about the importance of networking in translation, and a quick look at marketing that is very important to start your career as a translator. So if we wanted to have a graphical representation of the Getting Started guide that I'm trying to provide today, it would be this one. Okay, so second language learning, training, market, networking, and marketing. I will try again to maximize my PowerPoint. Hopefully it will work now. So we have learned a second language. What should we do now? Okay, what is the next step? The first thing is that we should try to transform our knowledge about the second language into an asset. Okay. And once you're done with your second language learning, you have different opportunities to transform your knowledge into an asset. So one of them is to start a career in academia. So through teaching and research. You might also want to start a career in teaching, so schools and institutions. And then you have another opportunity, which is the field of translation and interpreting. Now, the field of translation and interpreting is particularly wide in the sense that it includes more than what we think it includes. So you can be a translator working with written text in different fields, a simultaneous interpreter, a localizer, so you might want to start doing localization. Another opportunity that you have with a degree in translation and interpreting is to work on machine translation post-editing. So you would revise the translations performed by machine translation software. You can also be a consecutive interpreter. You can be a project manager. You can help in the creation of multilingual content. You might want to be a transcreator or subtitle and the dubbing of movies, or work for the editorial market. So translating for publishing houses. You can also start your career in the linguistic quality assurance or translate video games and localize video games. You can also start a career as a linguist, working for L2 learning platforms such as Duolingo, should be familiar to you, Babbel, and so on. You can help and provide your assistance as an expert in translation in multilingual desktop publishing, and also help in multilingual e-branding. So as you can see, in the field of translation and interpreting, there are many, many doors that you can open. Okay. So what do I need? Why do I need specific training in translation? It has been observed, and this is scientific evidence, that what you do determines the way your brain works and how efficient its response is. So what we do every day will determine the way our brain works and how it responds to those specific tasks that we are performing. Actually, the simple fact that you can speak a second language implies important structural changes in the way your brain works. So, for example, it has been observed that when you can speak a second language and you're bilingual, there is an increase in the quantity of gray matter volume that you have in your brain. So when we compare a bilingual brain to a monolingual brain, what we observe is more gray matter in the bilingual brain. Okay. It has also been observed that there is an effect of the age at which we acquire our second language on our brain. When we compare the brain of early bilingual and late bilingual, so people who acquire their second language early in life versus people who acquire their second language late in life, what we see is that there is no extra activation in the early bilingual brain, because the tasks they perform, for example, grammatical processing, are effortless for them. On the other hand, when we look at the brain of late bilinguals, so people who acquired their second language late in life, what we see is that they need to recruit more neural circuits compared to early bilinguals. And this happens because the tasks they perform in their second language, so for example, grammatical processing, are more effortful for them. So the consequence is that if you acquire your second language late in life, it would be more effortful for you to handle that second language, and so you will need to recruit more neural circuits. It has also been observed that the more you are exposed to a second language, the less you need to recruit those brain circuits. Okay, so if we compare two brains, okay, A has been less exposed to the foreign language compared to B, we will see that A, so the person who has been less exposed to the second language, will need higher activation in the brain compared to the person who has been more exposed to the second language. Okay, so this is another proof that what we do every day will determine the way our brain works. Now, this comparison is particularly important for us because here they are comparing the brain of a translator, which is brain A, and the brain of an interpreter, which is brain B. Okay, so far we've been observing that the fact that I'm bilingual implies that I have more gray matter, implies that I need to recruit less in my brain. So the more language I know, the less I will need to recruit some specific area in my brain. And when we compare translators and interpreters, so brain A is for translators and B for interpreters, we also observe that there is a huge difference, and that interpreters, these are people who have been trained at least for 9 months. Interpreters show higher connectivity within the brain, okay? And this happens as a consequence of their practice with interpreting. So we take translators and interpreters, they perform linguistic tasks, and interpreters show higher brain connectivity when they perform that task. It has been shown that this happens as a consequence of practice with interpreting, and that it happens because simultaneous interpreters develop very high levels of cognitive control. So the ability to control very well the task they are performing. Now, another proof that what we do every day, so the tasks we perform, will shape the way our brain responds, is also this study. So in this study, interpreters had to do listening, shadowing, or simultaneous interpreting. And what the authors observed is that depending on the task they need to perform, different brain regions will be recruited. So again, a proof that what we do, speaking a second language, interpreting, translating, and so on, will shape differentially the way our brain works. This effect of practice, it's so powerful on your brain that if we compare the aging brain of a monolingual and a bilingual, there are areas whose functioning get lost for monolinguals, but not for bilinguals. Okay, so for example, when bilinguals age, they keep this area, the parietal and temporal, so the posterior areas, totally active, and there is an incredible connectivity between posterior regions and anterior regions, while monolinguals will lose the connectivity as they age. Okay, and it has been shown that this is due to the fact that this group, of course, speaks a second language. So these are all proofs that what we do, for example, just speaking a second language versus translating, will determine the way our brain works. When we compare translators and untrained bilinguals, it has been observed that there are important differences. So again, translators are people who received training in translation tasks, and untrained bilinguals are people who did not receive any training in translation tasks. So people who can speak two languages, but were not trained in translation. What are the differences between these two groups? The translators are better at promptly activate words in the target language. They also better retrieve the syntax of the target language. They are more efficient in working memory tasks, so their memory is boosted compared to bilinguals. They have more cognitive flexibility, so they are able to better adapt to changes in the task. And in fact, they are more efficient at task switching. So the take-home message from all this evidence we have available is that what we do, so for example, speak a second language versus translate versus interpreting, will shape differentially the brain, your brain, on the long term. So if you want a specific response from your brain in a specific task, train your brain in that task. So imagine that, what is the key to be a professional translator? And imagine that you ask your brain will certainly reply, train me. Okay, that's the main point and the key to be a professional translator. You just need training in professional translation. Now, in the field of translation studies, it has been stated that your ability as a professional translator will depend on something, let's say a group of skills that are defined under the umbrella of translation competence. Okay, so when you're a professional translator, what you develop in order to efficiently translate professionally is translation competence. And I invite you to have a look at this chapter, which is really interesting and explains very well how all the sub-competencies included in the translation competence interact and define translation competence. I'm not going to go in depth today because I have many things to say, and we don't have much time, but this chapter is available online, so I invite you to have a look. It's particularly congruent with what has been shown in the psychological field. So the two fields, research on translation studies and research from the psychological point of view, converge. So we're going to talk now about training. So what do you need? What do you need to be trained as a professional translator and be able to work as a professional translator and stay in the market? Well, first of all, you will need an official university certificate in translation studies. Why? I'm providing data again, and this is real data by the ITAL, and you can check yourself online. So the main point is that if you are certified, these are your earnings, while if you are not certified, your earnings, of course, are less. So the main point for being certified is that you're offering to your clients a seal of excellence. Now here at Cal State Long Beach, as Clorinda mentioned, we have a minor in translation studies, and we're working on the postgraduate level of translation studies. And I really invite you to check the website or send an email to Clorinda if you're interested in more information. What are the advantages of an official certificate in translation studies? Well, you're trained again in professional translation and interpreting, which, as I already showed, is different from bilingualism. It has nothing to do. One thing is to be able to speak two languages. Another very different thing is to be able to work professionally with two languages. And then the training that is provided to you is can be applied to professional translation and interpreting, so to both of them. So it's versatile in this sense, and it's very comprehensive because you acquire foundational and transversal competencies that you can apply to the professional field, but even to academia. So if you are thinking about starting a master's or PhD, those skills, you can transfer those skills from the classroom to your future career in academia. So again, you will be able to apply the competencies that you acquire to the professional field, to academia, but also to language-related industry. So what I was mentioning before, you might want to work as a multilingual expert, for example. So for platforms that focus on second language learning, such as Duolingo, Babbel. There are many of them. Now, if you go to Italy, what you need, of course, is still a degree. So I'm mentioning here, and on the PowerPoint, when you download the PowerPoint, you will see that each element on the PowerPoint has the link directly to the website. So for example, here you have the link to the University of Bologna, the link to the University of Granada, and so on. For each image on the PowerPoint, you have a direct link. So if you go to Italy, the best places where you can study translation and interpreting are, of course, the University of Bologna, which is the oldest one. And they have a huge tradition in well, overall, but also in translation and interpreting. And the advantage, in my opinion, that with the University of Bologna is that they offer a double degree in collaboration with the University of Granada in Spain. So actually, what they the requirement is that you spend 1 year abroad. So, for example, in Granada, in order to get the double degree. Okay. Another important, very good institution is the UNINT, which is Università degli Studi Internazionali di Roma. So I'm sorry, it's trying to connect to the university actually. Give me 1 second. And then the third university I'm going to mention in Italy is the University of Trieste. Together with Bologna is, they have a huge tradition in translation studies. There is a difference in the, let's say, the languages they offer, in the sense that, for example, for Italian students, if you're interested in Spanish as your first language, Bologna should be your first choice. If you're interested in English as your first language, then Trieste would be a better option for you. Now, if you're thinking about starting a postgraduate certificate in translation study at the doctoral level, my personal advice is this is a very good one. Again, you have the link on the PowerPoint. And this is an international collaboration between scholars in very different fields of translation and from very different places in the world. So they give you a broad perspective about translation studies. And it's called international, because of this huge collaboration, it's called International Doctorate in Translation Studies. What is good to have? So we've been analyzing what it's important that you have. Now we're going to analyze what it's good to have. It's good to have an ATA certificate in translation, okay? Because this will give you additional visibility in the field of translation. Now, it's good to have because you have a second seal of excellence on your CV, and it's a guarantee that the quality of your work is good. The problem with this certification is that it's particularly difficult to get certified by ATAT, in the sense that the exam, the rate of pass for the exam is 20%. So it's really low, and the criteria to revise the translations is particularly strict. Also, regarding training, it is good to know that there is ALTA, which is a comprehensive blog on translation practice. And this is very interesting to me because they are not just a translation company, but they offer a huge variety of tips and resources and links to other sources that you can check. It's a very huge blog on translation practice. So I check it once a week in order to stay up to date in the field. Another element that you will need to train in order to be a professional translator would be the use of translation tools. Okay. Why do we need translation? Well, what are translation tools? Translation tools are software. Basically, they are software that you use to translate based on the suggestion on the suggestion of translations that will pop up on your screen while you translate, with the direct consequence that you will be quicker and your translation quality will be boosted, in a sense, because they are based on translation memory, which are huge databases that have been revised and created by professional translators. So we need knowledge about those tools in order to efficiently work on the translation market. And I'm providing data again, because it has been shown that the ability to use those translation tools directly correlates with the revenue registered on the market by different industries, meaning that the less you use CAD tools, the less you earn. And the more you use CAD tools, the more you earn. Okay. Now, in the last year, as you can see here, well, this on this axis you have the revenue, okay, within the market, and here you have the percentage of use of CAD tools. Now the red line is machine translation, which we will see is different from CAD tools, and the blue line is CAD tools. Now, when you compare them, you will see that the use of machine translation is also incorporated in very good industries. However, if you compare the blue line here at this point, so the highest revenue in the industry, if you compare the blue line and the red line right here, you will see that CAD tools are still more used compared to machine translation. Okay. Now, what is the difference between CAD tools and machine translation? CAD tools, the acronym means computer assist translation, and this kind of translation is still performed by humans. As I was mentioning before, you would use a software. You will, in a way, I will explain this super simple. In a way, you would insert the file, the source text, the original file you need to translate into the software. So you would have half of the screen with the original text. The other half, it's the space you use to write down your translation. And it works similarly to how cell phones and your laptop works when they suggest words or chunks. Okay. The only difference is that those software will suggest you the translation. So it's up to you later to accept or reject the translation, and it's up to you if there is no translation in the database that they're using to create a new translation. So this is basically the functioning of CAD tools, which are very different from machine translation. An example of machine translation is Google Translate. It's not the best machine translation tool. However, it's the one that we all know. So machine translation in the translation phase doesn't require human intervention, but of course you will need to revise a translation performed by a machine because, as we all know, these translations are not perfect. So they still need the human touch to be effective. Now, my advice about training your use of translation tools is regarding machine translation, try to use just these two. Okay, so Google DeepL, it's better than Google Translate actually. Okay, this tool has been enriched with more, let's say, linguistic chunks linked to, for example, sociolectal variation, idiomatic language. This is better than this one. So my advice, just limit yourself, so above all at the beginning of your career, just to the use of these two. And then regarding CAD tools, we have many. And I've reported on this slide just a few of them, but there are more. Okay, so some CAD tools are open source, while some others are proprietary software, meaning that you need to pay to use them. And then some of them are cloud-based and some other are desktop-based, meaning that you need to download them on your laptop in order to use them. Now, these are the most employed right now. So open source cloud-based, we have SmartCut. Again, you don't need to write because I have the link here on the PowerPoint to everything. So you have SmartCut, MakeCut, works fast anywhere. Desktop, open source, we have Cafetran, Omega T, and AGSub subtitling. This software is particularly interesting, above all because it's totally open source for those people who are interested in subtitling. And then proprietary software, we have cloud-based SmartLink. In my opinion, is the best one on the market. It's deeply oriented towards project management. And then we have SDL, which is honestly the one I like. SDL traders and the memo queue. I also like this, but this is very specific for localization. I mean, I would use it more for localization than for other materials. Now, I've included for you guys here a link to a video to have an idea of how CATool works, and also a link to a tutorial, a complete tutorial about how to use AGSUB subtitling. Just in case you want to try, you want to play with the software. Remember that Omega T is totally open source, so you can download it from the link that I'm providing, and you can start playing with the software. There are tools, you know, the world has changed. We rely more and more on technology, and there are nowadays even tools to help interpreters. Okay, something that you know, 10 years ago, these things did not exist simply. Okay, so for consecutive interpreters, we have the Smart Pen, which is a great, in my opinion, is a great invention for interpreters. So consecutive interpreting is what happens with reduced audiences. So imagine a seminar in a room. So that the consecutive interpreter would interpret just for, you know, those few people. Now, if people speak during a couple of minutes, it's okay. But sometimes the sender of the message will speak maybe for 10 minutes or 15 minutes. So simultaneous consecutive interpreting is based on taking notes of what the sender is saying. So consecutive interpreters take note, and then they will translate, interpret into the other language after the sender has is done with the discourse, right? So if the speaker, you know, is speaking for 10 minutes, it's really hard to remember all that information. So in that case, it's very useful if you can use a Smart Pen. What the Smart Pen does is that you will be able to take notes and also record the audio of the, you know, the message that was sent by the sender. So with, you know, you can use earbuds. You will be able to replay the original message and to translate at the same time into the other language. Moreover, you've been taking notes, so you will have, you know, you can align the information you have on your page with what you're hearing. So again, this is a great tool. And then there are aid tools also for simultaneous interpreters. And one is Interpret Bank. This is particularly useful when you are, you know, simultaneous interpreters or working in a booth. And what it does is that it will transform the oral message into text with a special emphasis on terminology, which is particularly helpful for interpreters, for simultaneous interpreters. So it will focus on transformation of, for example, acronyms, dates, names, and so on. So this is a great tool if you're interested in simultaneous interpreting. And then these two tools are especially useful for people who do simultaneous interpreting but want to do it remotely. So we could not even think about this 10 years ago, but now actually you can do simultaneous interpreting remotely. So you have a direct link to Interactio and Interprefy, and the functioning is basically that you listen to the sender of the message. You use the app, the software on your phone, on your tablet, on your laptop. So you listen to the person speaking and you interpret at the same time. So your voice would be, you know, will go through the app and will be received by the audience that needs that specific translation. So again, great tools even for interpreters. Now I have an advice for those students that are interested in translation, in working as professional translation. Translation always goes with a complement. meaning that you will need to build your own personal equation for the market. The complement is your field of specialization. Okay, so for example, you will need translation, and your goal, because your goal is to translate legal text, then in that case, your complement will be knowledge within the legal field. This would be your equation. So this would be the equation for a legal translator: knowledge in translation plus knowledge in the legal field. And the same is true for medical translators, or people who translate literature, and people, for example, who localize web pages. Okay, this would be their personal equation. So my advice is find your equation. You need to establish a goal and make a plan to reach that goal. You cannot cover, it's very different to cover 5, 6 different fields. Actually, what most translators do is that they choose 1 or 2. Most translators will choose just 1. And so they end up being an expert in the field, the complement that they choose. So let's review a little bit our strategy so far. We have been talking about second language learning and how to transform second language learning in an asset. We've been understanding why it's so important to have specific training in translation and interpreting. So what is next? We should know a little bit the market. This is a real report. The reports, the full reports, are available at this address. And it has been observed that for from 2020 to 2024, the translation market will be accelerating 19%. There is an incremental growth. This is the time range 2019 to 2024 of 900. I cannot even read this, which is, I think, 971.87 million. So imagine how huge and how incrementally is growing the market. The good news is this data refer to North America, which is great. Okay, so 30% of the growth that they were able to observe come from North America. So again, many doors opening to those people who are interested in translation here in the US. So according to a recent study from Common Sense Advisory Incorporation, the translation industry is estimated to be worth over 33.5 billion globally. And the revenue is split as follows. Europe, as you can see, is in first line. Then right after we have North America, but there is a reason for this difference. And then we have Asia, Oceania, Latin America, and Africa. So the reason that we always find Europe in first line concerning the translation demand is because in Europe you have many languages there. Okay, while in North America, let's say there is not such a huge need to translate at the general level for the different states, because English is spoken in all the states, right? So there is a reason explaining this pattern of results. Now, in order to start your career efficiently and launch yourself to the translation market, you should know your environment. I personally use this a lot, and it provides very comprehensive data about the situation of the market, of the translation market in the US. So you might want to check this, because they provide complete information about, for example, how earnings are distributed throughout the United States, how the job opportunities are distributed towards throughout the United States, and very different and diverse useful information. Now, We have the equivalent information in Europe, of course, and I've included the link to the data so you can check yourself to have an idea of how the market changes throughout Europe. So again, these are numbers from the US Bureau of Labor Statistics. These are numbers and reports too, but honestly, this is we should be grateful to have access to this kind of information, because it really helps us understand how the market is going and how we should orient our career as a consequence of the demand and the offer. Okay, so here I'm just providing the links and the names of some brands in translation that operate globally. Okay. Most of them are based in the US, actually. These are the best translation companies in the world, I would say, okay? And you have a direct link, so you can check yourself. And my personal advice is try to check their career section. So if you go to their webpage, you will see that they all have a career section, and try to check very frequently if you're interested in getting a job in translation. These are very good options. So try to check their career section on their webpage. There is one, and you have it here. There is one specific translation company, TransPerfect, that they, let's say, they have the tendency to hire young translators. So they don't mind if you don't have many experience in the field of translation. They will give you an opportunity, although probably they will give you text to translate to see more or less your competence, but they will give you a chance, okay? And this is a very good place to start for young translators. They are all great place to start. However, TransPerfect has the advantage that they offer many opportunities to young translators. So I have friends that started at TransPerfect. They are still there as in-house translators, and they are very happy. TransPerfect and all these translation companies will provide training, specific training within the company, because they use specific cut tools, for example. So they want you to be able to use the cut tool to handle the cut tool that they use at that translation company. Now that we had the possibility to understand how the translation market works globally, we should understand how the market works locally. Okay, so what we have here is a kind of hierarchy. Okay, so of course we have client in the market, is like whatever other market. So we have client, and huge clients such as McDonald's or Nike or Adidas or whatever, they will knock at very important translation agencies. So for example, Lionbridge, TransPerfect, and so on. Okay, so the huger the client, the more the possibility that that client will knock at this door. Okay, a door of huge translation agency. What we find in translation agency is that they count on the work of in-house translators. So they have their own teams of translators that they work within the translation agency, and these in-house translators are employees of the translation agency. However, these huge companies have so much work that they will very often, let's say, give work, the surplus work they have, to small agency and to freelancers. Okay, that small agency, what will do is that they will call freelancers. Okay, small agency might have a team of translators working in the small agency, but they count on the work of external freelancers. Okay, now this huge agency might also decide to hire freelancers, what is the difference between these and this? Let's say that these are more experienced than this, okay? And these are so experienced, these freelancers with the orange, you see, symbol here, they have so much experience that they have a huge workload. So what they will do is that they will subcontract other freelancers. Let's say that this is a novice stage. These are novice freelancers. Then we go up. We find experienced freelancers and small agency. And then we go up and we find huge translation companies and huge clients. Okay. Okay. So what is the difference between working in a translation company and working as a freelancer? The main difference is when you look at the workflow within a translation company, you realize that they work as a team, and each person, each position in the team, in the chain, you see it's almost a chain, it's very specific. So for example, we have the account manager that will take care of creating quotes for the clients, will take care of preparing invoices, will take care of pricing the translation and so on. Then we have people who will prepare the files to send to the translators. So if you work in a translation company, chances are that you will work here, just here in this role, okay, translation and edition. But we have a team working together in synergy. And the work of these people is coordinated by the project manager. So the project manager is a translator, but actually within the team, it will not translate. They have a translator right here. So the project manager just establishes a deadline, coordinates the work of all these people, takes care that, you know, this person is respecting the deadline and so on. So the project manager will take care of making the machine work. Okay. Now, of course, the main difference between working here as a translator and working as a freelancer is that if you work in a translation company, you have a very specific role. So responsibilities and tasks are shared. While if you work as a freelancer, you do all the job. So you do the job that in a translation company is done by very different people. Okay. It means that if you decide to be a freelancer, you need all these competencies. You need to take responsibility for all the phases of the translation project, and it's more work at the end of the day. What should be your philosophy in the translation market? Of course, to start local and go global. So translation and interpreting also has the advantage that even if you're living in California, you can work for Japan, because everything you need to work is a laptop. Okay, so in that sense, we are lucky because we can expand our activity. Okay, so the philosophy should be always start local and go global. Okay, let's go back to our strategy. So remember that we are trying to build a strategy, a plan to be effective translators and have a niche on the market. So now that we know a little bit more the market, we should think about starting our networking. Okay. What is good to have? Again, it's good to have a membership with ATA. Why it's good to have a membership, to be a member of ATA? ATA is the most important association based on translation in the United States and globally. So this translates into, you know, the fact that the network opportunities you have here will become job opportunities for you. And again, as I mentioned for the certificate, a membership or a certificate with them is an extra seal of quality, so additional visibility on the market. Then it's also good to have a membership with GALA, okay, which is very similar to ATA, but it's mostly based on localization. And again, the reason is exactly the same that I mentioned for ATA. And you have the direct link by clicking on the picture. And then if you go to Europe, of course, it's very good to have a membership with EST, which is the European Society for Translation Studies. The name is tricky in the sense that you might think that it's just for people interested in translation studies, so in research, but it's not. Actually, it's a huge network in Europe between professionals, academics, interpreters. So it's very diverse and it's a huge source of information and opportunities. Again, network opportunities, job opportunities, and additional visibility. If you go to Italy, then you should keep in mind these two associations, okay? And it's good if you can get a membership with them. Now, if you want to be a member of translation association, there are some of them that require that you have translated something. I don't know, maybe 3 books, at least 3 books, but some of them don't have requirements. So you might want to check the Associazione Italiana Traduttori e Interpreti. You have the direct link, and the ANITI, Associazione Nazionale Italiana Traduttori e Interpreti. If you're interested in translation research, this is very good to have, okay? A membership with ATISA, the American Translation and Interpreting Studies Association, and it's very convenient because it's not limited to the United States. I mean, within the United States, it's really huge, the reaching power they have, but they also have agreements, bilateral agreements with Canada, for example, and with Europe. So they have established collaborations with what I was mentioning before, for example, the European Society for Translation Studies, with Spain, the Asociación Ibérica de Estudios de Traducción, and so on. So this is becoming right now, because these agreements are very recent. So this is becoming a huge network, a huge word network based on translation. It would be big. This network would be very big. Other opportunities that you have to network if you join volunteer translators. This is particularly good at the beginning of your career to gather experience in the field, because sometimes it's different to send a CV and to get a job without much experience. So you have different alternatives there. You might want to start an internship, even if it's not paid, or you might want to join, for example, Translators Without Borders, so to volunteer. This is just an example. You have many other volunteer associations based on translation. So, you have the advantage that you gather experience in the field, and you also collaborate and help people for a cause. Another way to do networking, so to meet people in the field, is to work collaboratively on the same project using advanced translation technology. This is particularly interesting for people who like cartoons, for example, or manga. Okay, this phenomenon is called fan subbing, and most of it is based on subtitling by amateur translators of manga cartoons. Okay, so the main point here is that those amateurs translators get so much experience by subtitling that they become really good translators. So if you look at what they do, actually their translation works very well, and are collaborative in the sense that they collaborate together from very different parts of the world on the same project, mostly on manga cartoons. Again, you have a link here if you want to have a look. And another way to network is to use platforms based on user generated contents. Okay, these two platforms are like the Bible for translators, for professional translators, whatever stage they are, so novice, expert, freelancers, translation companies. This is like our Bible. Okay, it's very important that you regularly check what's happening on these two platforms. So the first one is ProZ, and the second one is the Translators Cafe. And there are more, but these are the main tools. I mean, there is no translator that has no knowledge of these two platforms. And here, the members would just share their expertise. You can ask anything you need. People help even in pricing of translations, how to prepare if you feel lost and you don't know how to prepare a quote or how to prepare an invoice. Here you will find valuable help by other translators. They even have tables and databases focused on prices in translation that you can use. You can filter according to several criteria, like the language you're using to translate, and so on. So again, this is an incredible source of information for translation and interpreters, and also a huge opportunity to do networking, so to network and meet people that might be interested in what you do, so that might want to give you work. Another thing that is really important about networking is that you should not limit to the field of translation. So if we take back your equation, translation plus legal knowledge, for example, if you decide that this is your equation, you should join this regularly. So seminars or meetings based on law. So your ability to network and meet people should go beyond translation and should be also focused on the field of specialization that you choose to stay in. So why should I go to the Southern California Law Seminar and Expo? Because I will be able to meet people there, lawyers, experts, and so on, that might need my services. Okay. This is why it's so important to do networking outside translation, also outside translation, and in the complement that we chose for our equation. Okay, let's go. Let's consider again our strategy, and let's try to talk a little bit about marketing. This part is particularly important for those of you who want to be freelancers. Okay, of course, if you work in a translation company as an in-house, you don't have to worry about marketing because you don't need to sell yourself since you already have a job, right? But if you want to start your activity as a freelance translator, of course, you need to gather additional knowledge about marketing. So marketing is a very complex thing. We've already talked about planning, about management a little bit, about integration, but we need to mention today at least the following 4 points. So website design, social media, planning and optimization, and conversion analysis. And I will explain each element included in your marketing strategy, and hopefully it will be clear in a second. So regarding marketing website design, you do need, if you want to start as a freelancer, you really need a website. My advice, my personal advice, there are many more tools that you can use. My advice is use this tool. So WordPress, it's the price is starting $4 per month, and it's very intuitive. The same is true for Wix. You can start for free with the disadvantage that you have no personalized domain, but you can think about buying a domain later, so you don't have to. Now, the advantage is that these two tools have over other tools is that they are extremely intuitive, they are user-friendly, so you don't need any knowledge in coding, for example. And the third point, this one, it's very important. They offer to your clients the possibility to directly pay you for your translation services. So using PayPal, debit, credit, Google Pay, a lot of different platforms. Then regarding social media, we need to gain visibility on social media. So nowadays, it really makes the difference having social media or not to do our professional marketing. Okay, so you will need at least Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. It's just my personal opinion. What I think is working best right now with translation is Instagram, then Twitter, and then LinkedIn. Why? Because on LinkedIn, you either have people searching for work, which is your competence, or huge translation companies that are doing their own marketing on LinkedIn. So for a freelancer, I think that Instagram and Twitter are more effective way to launch its services or her services to the market. My personal advice for you is never mix your personal and professional profiles. And on your professional profiles, focus on the profession and not on other topics. Another important point of your marketing strategy as a freelance translator is planning and optimization. I'm going to mention several ideas, several points that we freelance translators really need to take into account in order to reflect these ideas on our marketing strategy. I will make exact reference to the webpage in a couple of slides. So we all need to take into account always that a professional translator can translate 1,500 to 2,000 finished words, revised and edited per day. This is only true if the text is of general nature and with no spatial formatting, meaning that these patterns, this workflow, this amount of translated work will vary a lot as a consequence of very different factors, such as the fact that you can use or not cut tools, the amount of research involved, if the original text is alive or dead, if you are a freelancer or if you work in-house, if your client needs additional services such as notarization, certification, and more. If the text includes, as mentioned, special formatting, for example, graphs, images, unusual files, if your translation requires also localization and transcreation, this will take much more time. So it's very important each time we start a work, but overall, when we start our career, to have a clear idea of how we are going to improve and maintain our workflow. So it's our responsibility always, and part of our expertise, to become familiar with our personal timing. So how many words can I translate in an hour, for example, and work on that timing in order to improve it. The more words you translate in a day, the quicker you will be, the happier your client, more money you will make. And then at the beginning of your career, there is a trick that is do frequent simulation. So you just simulate, the translation process. So you sit in front of your laptop and you literally write down how much time it will take you to translate, 500 words, for example. Okay. Then you always need to take into account extra time for revision and formatting. This is just, a tip. A professional reviser can revise 4,000 to 6,000 words per day. So it's very important that you do simulation and never miss a deadline, otherwise the client will never get in touch again. This is very important. How all these important points reflect on the marketing strategy? Well, for example, on our webpage, which is one of the main points of our marketing strategy. So it's our responsibility as translators to clearly state to our clients, for example, on our webpage, how your personal workflow works, then the timeline, so how much time it would take to finish a translation, how we charge, so per word, per page, per hour, how we count words on a document, especially in cases in which we are charging the client per word, if there are extra charges or fees. So for example, imagine that your client needs a certified or notarized translation. Imagine that they send you that text. Imagine that you need extra time for formatting, or you need to edit the text, or your translation includes a transcription, or you need to do extra research because the text is particularly complex. Imagine that your client wants an urgent translation, or localization is implied in your translation, or you are required to do transcreation. All these services are, let's say, under different prices. They are not included in the fee for translation. And you need to clearly state on your webpage or your agreement of services what your policy is about all these points. And also you should always specify your policy about electronic copies and dark copies. Electronic copies, usually they are provided, of course, for free. I mean, it's included in the price in the invoice, while hard copies are paid separately by the client. Okay. Then other main points within your marketing plan. Always provide a quote to your client and wait for confirmation before you start any translation. If your client doesn't confirm that you can start the translation, never start a translation, because you don't want to see yourself in the situation in which you're done with the translation and the client doesn't accept the quote. And always provide an invoice, and you can easily learn, well, easily, more or less easily, learn how to make one. There are different sources online. I just picked one that, in my opinion, it's good. It's canva.com. You might want to check. You have the link on the slides. Why should I always provide an invoice? My personal advice is never do anything without providing an invoice, because that's a seal of quality, of professionalism. So it says a lot about you and your marketing. So if you decide to start your career as a freelancer, you really need to become your own manager. And these sources, I'm sure they will help a lot. I will start by reading this, which is Freelance Translation from Zero to Hero. It's a free starting guide. You have the direct link on the slides, and then I will go up and read more books. These are super new books, so they are totally up to date. They are about how to succeed in translation, but from the perspective of marketing. So translation is also a lot about, you are your own entrepreneur. Okay, you're selling your own services, and that's a skill. You need to learn how to do it. It's not an innate skill. The last point we need to analyze about marketing is, acquiring the skill of be able to do conversion analysis. What is conversion analysis? Is the ability to translate your activity, for example, throughout 6 months or 1 year, to translate what you did into data that you can observe and can teach you something about how to improve your work. So let's imagine that this is, these are the data for your activity during 2020 as per your website records. Because when you do your own website, when you build your own website, everything, all your activity and the economic transactions will be recorded on the website. You can do this. So imagine that, during this year, you've been translating 70% were official documents, 20% were instruction manuals, and 10% were comics. Okay, let's imagine that these three are your main fields are your main complements. Okay, so if you look at the data, you become aware that just a few people hired you for comics translation, for example. Okay, so when I look at the data, I start wondering, okay, why my users will not hire me for comics translation? So that's a good starting point in the sense that I'm starting my conversion analysis. So I should, start to brainstorm about possible reasons. So maybe that part is not especially visible enough, is not especially visible on my website. So I will improve my web page and social media, making that offer more visible. For example, you might want to add banners or different colors, more ads, and specific sections, and so on. This is an example of conversion analysis. So you look at your activity, you transform it into data. You can easily do it using Excel. It's super easy. You even have tutorials on YouTube on how to do conversion analysis, and then you start observing your activity, asking questions, and finding way to improve your marketing and your revenues at the end of the day. So your strategic plan is now complete. We have been analyzing in depth how to transform your second language into an asset through very different steps. So specific training in translation and interpreting, providing psychological evidence by knowing the market, how the market works, by knowing a little bit more about networking and marketing. However, it's very important, above all at the beginning of your career, when you're starting, you have to make the decision about if you want to be a professional translator. That translation is not something like that's it. I mean, translation implies this job, both in translation or interpreting, would imply constant updating. So you're always working on the updating throughout time of both your hard skills and soft skills. So these two skills that you need to be an efficient translator are quite different. Right in the middle, you have your ability to translate, and that ability will require constant updating. An important take-home message for today, and I hope that you enjoyed the talk, is never stop learning, because life never stops teaching. And that's all for today. Thanks for listening, guys. I know it was long.
Thank you, Giulia. What an amazing presentation. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really.
I hope it was helpful. And you have it online. If you need the links to all the information, you have the links to everything, so you can start exploring everything on the PowerPoint.
Wonderful presentation, really.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
It's time now for questions.
So there are a couple of questions in the chat. If we can get to those first.
Perfect.
We've got Christina asked, Giulia, can you clarify what transcreation means?
Okay. Actually, this is something I've been doing a lot of time, but Clorinda was the person who told me that they invented a name for it. So this was something that, I did a lot. So transcreation is everything in translation that implies creativity. Meaning that is not limited to translating the word or the meaning, but it implies adapting something, for example, the text that sells a product, to another language and culture in a way that it will impact the target culture and people the same way that it did in the source culture. But sometimes it's closer to, most times it would be closer to a rewriting and a redoing of the text instead of translation itself. So in order to do that, you need to be particularly creative. The example that I always provide in class to my students is, imagine you need to translate the logo, the Nike logo, just do it. Okay. Imagine you have to translate that. And Joanna, I think I used that example during our last class. So imagine you have to translate that logo, just do it. Okay. Imagine you need to translate the logo to Chinese. Probably what you need to make that logo, those 3 words work in the Chinese culture is not just the literal translation of just do it, but you will need to rewrite the whole thing in a way that the emotional and the motivational impact of those 3 words will work efficiently in Chinese, for example. Okay, now what Nike did, they didn't translate it. It's just do it all around the world. They were clever, right? They just kept it in English. But imagine you need to translate that to make it work with the same impact and the same emotional background and the same motivational background that it's creating in the American culture. Now, what they did is that they did a borrowing. They just borrowed it from English and they use it. In Italy, still, for example, just do it. If I have to imagine a translation, semplicemente fallo, that doesn't work in Italian. Okay, semplicemente fallo. Or in Spanish, simplemente hazlo. Is not working. So you would have to rewrite it, okay, in order to make it work. And there is also a sound component. Just do it. It's super short, immediate. Semplicemente fallo is not going to work. It's too long. It doesn't sound good. So you will have to rewrite it. You need to be creative in order to do it. And that's part of transcreation. It would take you so much time. I mean, that's just crazy. You can spend 7 days or 7 months just to translate those 3 words to come up with the good solution for it.
Okay, the next question is from Angela. She wants to know, how does one choose to calculate the charge, whether by character, word, page, or hour?
Sorry, Joanna, I missed the last part.
So how does one choose to calculate the charge, whether it's by character, word, page, or hour?
So guys, I spent 4 classes on that with my students. It's complicated to explain because there are so many things to take into account. But if you do the minor in translation, I can explain it.
That was my point. Yes, perfect.
It takes time, but overall, there is a minimum fee that you should be earning when you translate just 1 page, which is here, not in the US, but at least in California, the lowest fee you should earn is $25 per page, even if you have just 2 words on that page. Okay. Now, imagine that they give you a translation is just 3 words. Are you going to price that translation by the word or by the page?
Or by the 7 days of just do it.
Exactly. Imagine you have that on that page. Okay. Are you going to price that translation by the word, so 0.08 cents per word? Or you're going to take into account the time you're going to spend to translate just do it. Or are you just wasting your time without earning anything? It doesn't make sense for us, right? Okay, so the minimum fee, there is always a minimum fee you should be earning for just one page, which is 25, meaning that if you have 10 words on a page, you're not going to price that translation by the word. You're going to price that translation by the page. So you would apply the minimum fee or by the hour. Imagine you have a short page, but it's the whole thing, it's localization. You're not going to price that translation by page neither. You're going to price that translation by the hour. So it depends on so many factors. And what we do in class is that we put ourselves in all the possible situations. And we understand how to price translation. We understand how to build an invoice. It's a complicated process. It's not easy, but it's part of the translation process, because if you don't learn how to do it, you simply cannot function as a professional translator on the market. I wish they had taught me, but they didn't. I had to learn myself. The thing now is that I don't want my students to be in the same situation that I was. And when I started translation, I had no idea about how to price my translation. So they called me for a translation. They asked me, Giulia, can you translate that? Of course, my first translation. And I had no idea what to do. And I don't want to see my students in the same situation I had to go through and learn by myself. So what I do is that I do it in class. I am sure that when they go outside and they start working as a freelancer, many of them want to be freelancers, they know what to do. That's why, I included it in the presentation, because it's part of your translation competence. Actually, one aspect of the translation competence is the professional competence, and it weighs a lot on your plate, on your table. But overall, guys, never less than $25, more or less. You can use ProZ. So ProZ offers, and if my students are there, we would be doing this in class. You can select the languages, the combination. You can select the field you're translating, and they will provide you the minimum fee you should be applying to your translation by the hour, by page, and by the word. So there are tools you can use to help yourself understand.
Okay. So the next question is from Brenda. She's asking, she says, for literary translation, I shared the PEN America model with the editor, but the negotiation between the author and the publisher fell through in the end. Are you familiar with the PEN America model, and do you recommend it?
No, I'm not familiar with that, but this happened to me in Europe. So there are cases in which the editor and the author, there are problems with the rights. And I can check this for you. Who is Brenda? Brenda, you can send me an email if you want. I can check this for you. I don't have this experience in the US because I mostly work for the editorial market, but in Europe. I never worked here in the US. But I can check it for you. Since something similar happened to me, there are, sometimes people simply don't understand each other. So the editor might not come to an agreement with the author for, economic reasons, monetary reasons. Yeah, so publishers don't want to draft contracts. So he or she would not give a contract to you, or what's happening there? Brenda.
So Brenda, you can unmute.
Okay, thank you. Yes, it was a strange conversation. At the beginning, it was only with the publisher, but suddenly the author wanted to be part of it, I guess, and they were not even on the same page. Like the publisher was saying, let's start with this book, but the author then said that no, she wanted to start with this other book. So I realized also that there were probably problems of communication among themselves.
And you cannot do anything in that case. You need to leave them alone, give them time to clarify what they want to do. because there your role is just, for example, once an editor told me, can you please speak to the author about this? No, of course not. I don't have to speak to the author about this. You're the editor, so you're the person who should fix those problems. I'm just a translator.
Right. So
my advice is don't enter into that.
I was very happy, and it was a nice experience. I was very excited, and I never felt like, oh, never mind. No, it was a good experience, and I just realized, okay, maybe it was best not to go into this. But also, I was very, very determined that there was no way I was going to go into a translation of. It was a series of books, two series, and I just knew that there was no way I was going to do something like that without a contract, because I wanted to protect myself.
No, Brenda, don't do that. No, don't even think. Otherwise you will lose totally the translation rights. When you translate something for a publishing house, they will give you money yearly according to what the book sells, for example. Those are called translation rights. But translation rights are mostly about the intellectual rights you have on the books you have translated. Okay, so the authors have author rights and you have translation rights, the royalties, sorry.
Yes, and that contract that I sent the link, it also shows that, what the amount of, the percentage of royalties, or, it was very interesting to learn about this process, of the contract. And yeah, like I just know that, there's a sort of, like, translators are a vulnerable group. That's what I've learned in the process, right? Like, maybe they're not, or most people, they're not aware of the work that goes behind it. They don't value it because they don't know the work that goes behind it, I think. And I know that there's in this website, PEN America, I read about this movement, to, give dignity to translators, as well as, thinking of why the US doesn't translate more foreign works into English, right? It's mostly everything's happening outside. Everything's being translated into English. From English into other languages, but not the other way around. So it was a very interesting experience, because I learned a lot about, in a way, the work of literary translation. I suppose also anywhere else, it's just hasn't been valued enough.
Yeah,
that was
I agree.
My experience. Yeah. So, but congratulations, because you're doing it.
Brenda, if you don't have a contract and they don't give you guarantee that you have the intellectual property and rights on what you do, honestly, I would not do it, because that's like giving away what you do for nothing.
Exactly.
Maybe you can, skip the money. Okay, because sometimes I had to work for free, of course, at the beginning of my career, because I had to. It was at the beginning. Okay, we all work for free, we all do internships and so on. So one thing is, okay, I don't need the money. I would do this because, I want to, I'm really interested, but don't give away your intellectual effort. It's not worth it. And why should they ignore you if you're doing all the job, or not recognize you on the cover of the book? You have the right to that. Right. And you should sign a contract to defend that right.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. If you want, we can talk, Brenda. If you need help or whatever, just get in touch.
Definitely. I will. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Okay, so we have several people asking if you can share the link to the PowerPoint in the
sure.
Chat. And we also have a couple of people asking about obtaining the recording. So I don't know who's recording.
Yes, I will send the recording, guys.
Okay, perfect.
So this is the link to the presentation. No, sorry, I just sent it to Enrico. Give me 1 second. Okay.
There we go. Perfect.
Okay. And I will send a link to the presentation. What I can do is that I can upload the presentation in the same folder where you will find presentation, so you can download the video and presentation if it works for you.
Okay. There is one more question. And it is, so she says, I am already working in Chinese and English interpretation and learning Italian. Where, which region or which discipline do you think are the best opportunities for me?
So in Italy, who is asking? Maybe we can talk directly.
Let's see. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Boyi?
Boyi Zheng?
Yes.
Boyi, hi.
You can go ahead and unmute.
Hi, Giulia.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
So what do you refer? Please go ahead.
Yes, yes, sorry. Yeah, so I just found it interesting that you have given the data which shows like Europe's 40%, while North America like 30%. I would like to give your opinion on like where would the better opportunities be in terms of like international relations.
International, at the international level or here in the US?
Well, I'm a Chinese national, so like really I'm prepared to travel if I can do it professionally.
Okay, so if you're interested in knowing the distribution of work opportunities and earnings in China, you should go directly to their Institute of Statistics. I mean, you know, all the countries have one. So you should go directly there and search, because they organize the information according to different sectors of the industry. So you should search for translation and interpreting or languages. I'm very familiar with that because I've been searching in different countries. So they all have that source. So the Institute of Statistics of China should have that information. If you want information about the US, it should be the US Bureau of Statistics. If you want information about Europe, it should be the Institute of Statistics of the European Union. They have one, of course. And it's really, they have, you know, a search banner. So you just type translation and you will see all the reports. The information is open source. It's available online. So you can have an idea. Fields, I would suggest doing the same. For example, if you check the US Bureau of Statistics, I'm not familiar with China. Honestly, that's a market that I'm not familiar with. But what I know is that people that have Chinese as language are working a lot. Okay. Above all in the commercial field. If you want the exact numbers, again, according to different fields, for example, medical translation versus legal translation versus, go to the webpage of the Statistics Institute. I'm sure they have that information and divided according to the different sectors.
Thanks a lot. And I would still like to know, like, as a person whose first language is neither English or Italian, like, do you think how should I best benefit from learning Italian as a translator?
How?
Yeah, I mean, like, would it be limited if would my opportunity be limited when it comes to combinations like Italian and English, for example?
No. So the limits you might have as a translator are not because you're a combination of languages. The limits you might have, it's a kind of gap in your knowledge. So a poor translation quality. Of course, at the beginning of our career, it's harder like in all careers. Okay. You might want to start with an internship. You might want to start, doing some works for other people. So maybe you're not paid as much as you want. But the limits are not due to the combination of languages you have, but a poor translation quality of your product, of what you offer to your client. If clients start seeing that your translations are poor, I'm mentioning this because I've been seeing this a lot of time. The client will not call anymore. So the limits are always tied to the translation quality you can provide and not to the combination of languages.
Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
So I think that's it for the chat. So if anyone else has any questions that they want to
guys, or if you're shy or you're tired because it's Friday night, so I understand that, just get in touch. If you want, you can send an email. Just feel free to get in touch anytime.
I think it's an excellent idea. It's kind of almost late, and I'm pretty sure some already left. So maybe it's time. It's a sign for us to say, okay, maybe there's one last question if somebody has one. Otherwise, Giulia's generosity is very appreciated, and she'll be happy to answer to your questions via email. So feel free to ask now or hold your breath.
Whatever.
No questions? Well, thank you again for being here. Thank you, Giulia, for your fantastic presentation.
Thanks for having me.
Words. So thank you to everybody who participated.
Thanks for having me.
For Corinda, Hilde, yeah.
Thank you, all of you. Thank you, Giulia. It was wonderful again. I cannot stop saying. Thank you. Really.
Thank you, Hilde. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Oh, I just want to mention one last thing, if I can, since there have been many questions about it. Giulia presentation will be uploaded also on our channel at the Italian Cultural Institute, where we have all the presentation of the series. So you can find it there.
Great.
Great.
Perfect. Thank you again, everybody. Good night.
Thank
See you in the
guys.
next
Good night.
meeting.